Welcome back. Continuing from our previous lecture on automatic variable selection in ProcReg in SAS. So we had covered how to use backward, forward, and stepwise options in regression to automatically select a subset of significant variables from our eligible pool of variables. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit on the overfitting of a model. So, what do we mean when we say a model seems to be overfitted or we need to guard against overfitting? So, the technical definition of overfitting is when the model starts to describe the random error and noise in the sample or the training data which we are using to train the model instead of the relationship. In other words, the model starts to overfit on the training data itself, i.e., the sample, and not the underlying population. So what we must be aware of is that we are always working with samples, and as we know from previous lectures, that when we're working with samples, there is a distribution of samples or a sampling error which comes into play. That is, the sample will never be completely a carbon copy of the population. So there will always be deviations in the sample from the underlying population. And whenever we want to build a model, we want to build a model which will perform well on the population rather than specifically on the sample. So if I start to overfit, that means the model will start to fit on towards the quirks in the the sample data, and the errors which have come into the model, the data set due to sampling error, and try to explain those errors rather than the underlying population. So what will happen is my model starts fitting on the training data very well. I get a very high R square. I get a low root mean square error and coefficient of variation. My errors or residuals are very small. And I'm very happy. The model is doing very well. And then I use that model and apply it on a different subset of data, or I go and deploy the model in real life. And suddenly I find, I expected an R square of 85 or 0.85, and I put it on the ground, and after checking with the the predicted values with what is actually coming on the ground, I see, the R square of the model has fallen down to 40 or even 30. And what could have gone wrong? Right? It's quite possible that the model that we finally selected and deployed in the field was a grossly overfitted model. That model was only able to predict the training data very well. It was not able to predict the population or or samples which were extracted from the population, the same population as training, but different way. So in that case, the model was only good for the training data and not anywhere else. And that's a problem that we can face when we are building models. We want to build a model which will perform on any kind of sample extracted from the same underlying population, and not just the same sample on which the model has been fitted or trained on. So how does overfitting take place? Overfitting in 99% of the cases, or rather in most of the cases, happens when we force too many variables into the model, and these variables which may be redundant or insignificant, and they start to inflate the R square. So in our previous lectures, we had talked about the p-value of the estimate. That is, when we estimate the slope against a variable, the parameter estimate, we get the standard error of the parameter estimate as well. So using the standard error and the estimate that we get, we generate or we conduct a t-test which talks about the significance of the variable, whether that variable actually has a linear relationship with the dependent variable or not. And with that t-test, we get a p-value. So if I look at the SAS output for any of these, so I'll just run this stepwise regression again and look at the p-value of the variables that I get. So let's go to the result and open. Let's open the last model fit itself, and let's look at the variables, and we look at the t-test and the p-value. So these are the p-values against the t-test, and we are testing the null hypothesis that the variable does not have a linear relationship and this parameter estimate is actually 0. And the alternative is no, it has a significant relationship and the parameter estimate is non-zero. And looking at the p-value, then we can figure out whether that variable is significant or not. And what happens is when we force in too many insignificant variables, as we see that the R square starts to rise. Now when we did backward regression, we saw that as we started removing the variables, the R square started to go down even when we remove insignificant variables. The problem is the R square goes down by very small amounts, so it doesn't matter. But if you look at the other way, that if I start stuffing in insignificant variables, the R square starts to rise also a little. And we can compound this problem by having a very large pool of variables. For example, assuming that you have a pool of hundreds of variables and you force all of them into the model, and each variable increases the R square by a minuscule amount. But by forcing in hundreds of variables, my R square starts to go rise up, and ultimately, it climbs and does an asymptotic approach towards a perfect model, that is an R square of 1. In that particular case, we would have grossly overfitted our model, and we are getting a high R square only on the training data, and when we actually apply it on the field, I will get a model which does not perform very well. So this is where an overfitting takes place. In overfitting, we are forcing the errors or residuals in the training data to go down significantly, but when I apply it on a different data set or on the validation data set, the errors are extremely large. So this is an example of overfitting. So I'll show you what a graph of overfitting looks like. So this is an example of a behavior of an overfitted model. On the x-axis, we have the number of variables that we keep stuffing into the model. So this is an example of, let's say, forward regression that we are doing. On the x-axis, we have the number of variables entered into the model. And on the y-axis, we have the total error of that model. So as you can see, the blue line talks about the data on which we're actually building the model. And the red line talks about real life data or a holdout data or a testing data, or it could be also the population performance. So as we see that as I keep on increasing the number of variables, the error in my training data continues to go down, and it starts to approach an asymptotic, it begins an asymptotic approach towards zero error itself. So what we can do or what we can see is that irrespective of any number of variables already into the model, if I add in even one more variable, the error always goes down. But if I look at the red line, which talks about the performance of the data in the field, I will see that after a certain point, right, the error of the model starts to rise again. And this is where the inflection point is identified, that at this point in time, if I continue to add more variables into my model, I will end up overfitting the model. And this is a this is a big problem, because on the training data, I can see that the model is continuing to get better and better and better. But in the real life, the model has now started to deteriorate. And I need to stop adding variables at this point in time. Now there are various methods which allow us to find out that tipping point where overfitting starts to happen. And one of the easiest and the one which we've been doing currently is looking at the p-values and weeding out variables which are insignificant. So in our example, whenever we weeded out an insignificant variable, we saw that the R square of the training data went down a little. So, and I had mentioned at that point in time that the R square going down, even if we remove an insignificant variable, is of no concern, because we are more concerned of the performance of the model on real life data. And that was the reason why we stopped or we removed irrelevant variables, so that we don't end up overfitting the model. So that's one way of looking at a model which is overfitted. The other is that we also look at the adjusted R square. So if I look at the SAS output over here in the R square table, there's another. So we covered all of these terminologies we explained in our regression video. What does each of these mean? But I hadn't talked about R adjusted R square at that point in time. So what the adjusted R square is, it takes into it's a correction factor. You can we can describe it as a sort of a correction factor applied onto R square to account for the fact that R square continues to inflate, and we may be overfitting the model. What it does is it compares the standalone R square and judges whether that R square has been achieved by overfitting or not, and it introduces a penalty on that. So the adjusted R square is always a little lower than R square, and if the R square has been inflated due to variable stuffing, the adjusted R square will actually start to go down. So the graph of R square and adjusted R square it will actually be very close to this particular graph, except it will be inverted. So I'll show you what the graph between R square and adjusted R square can look like. So for example, we have a similar graph over here. So I'm going to talk about here. So we're going to plot the R square on the y-axis and number of variables in the model on the y square on the y-axis, and let's plot an R square value. So let's say I'm going to draw the R square using a red line. So let's say the R square, as I keep on increasing the number of variables in the model, my R square continues to rise, and after a point in time it will start to plateau, and then it will start an asymptoted approach towards 1. So it will never touch 1, but I'll end up with a model which has a very large R square. So let's say this is R square of 1, this is R square of 1, and this is 0 over here. And as you can see that the R square line, so this is the R square line, it continues to rise as the number of variables starts to go on. Now if let me draw adjusted R square as well. So let's draw adjusted R square using the blue line. So the adjusted R square initially, as the number of variables rises, it will start to rise and it will be very close to the R square value. But at the point where the model starts to plateau, the adjusted R square, the adjusted R square and R square will start to diverge, and beyond a certain point in time it will start to go down. So a kind of divergence will come into play between R square and adjusted R square. So let me just write it down over here. So this is adjusted R square, and this point in time where the divergence starts to take place, so this is the inflection point for overfitting. Yeah, yeah. So this is the inflection point for overfitting. So if I build a model into this area, so this is a overfitted model. So I need to stop adding variables at this point in time. So this is critical over here, and beyond this I will start to actually overfit the model. So this is how I can actually judge the relationship between adjusted R square and R square. If the difference between adjusted R square and R square is large, that means we have done a model, or we have overfitted a model. And what will happen is, if I start removing the number of variables, start to go down, you will see the R square starts to decrease, but the adjusted R square will actually increase at this point in time. So that's another indicator that by removing the variable from the model, I'm actually making the model better. So this is the relationship between R square and adjusted R square. And if you look at the formula for uh, R square formula is nothing but 1 over 1 minus R square multiplied by n minus 1 over n minus p minus 1, whereas n is the sample size and p is the number of variables that we are bringing into the model. So as you can see, the R square is inversely proportional to the number of predictors. So increasing the number of predictors into the model will actually make my adjusted R square smaller. And it will also impact my R square over here. So R square, while it is positively correlated, adjusted R square is positively correlated to the normal R square, it is inversely correlated to the number of variables in my model. So if I start stuffing in my model with large number of variables, which does not increase my R square. So if you look at this graph, initially when I am adding the number of variables, the increase in R square, more than offsets the penalty which is coming in due to the increasing the number of variables. But after this point, you can see the increase in R square is very small, but the number of variables keep on rising. Therefore, by judging the penalty term, the adjusted R square starts to fall down. So this is the where the inflection point occurs in place. So as you can see, this is a very elegant formula to actually capture the concept of overfitting. One more uh, cause or one more significant point which we wanted to make is that the interpretation of adjusted R square is not the same as R square. So adjusted R square is not interpreted as the percentage variance captured. So it should not it should not be compared, or it should not be used in lieu of standalone R square. It is used primarily as an indicator of overfitting and model stability. So I'm going to give you an example now. So if I look over here, and I'm going to do this manually now, and let's build a r square and adjusted r square table, and we're going to start with backward selection, and I'm going to do backward selection manually, and we will start off with all variables in the model, and let's have a look. So I'm just going to remove this all the options over here and start removing the variables manually. So I'll do it using all variables in the model, and let's look at our model and more specifically what is the r square and adjusted r square. So you can see r square is 0.6038. I didn't get the point. Yeah, there it is. And adjusted r square is 0.5761. So there's a divergence between the two, and it does seem that it might be overfitted. So I'm going to remove one variable. So minus one variable. And which variable should we remove? We'll remove the most useless variable over here. The most useless variable is 0.92, p-value 0.92, which is SEB1. It's the most insignificant. So I'm going to go ahead and remove SEB1 from here and run this model again. Let's look at the results. And it's come down to 0.6038 again, and there you see the adjusted r square actually starts to rise a little. So my r square is almost the same, but adjusted r square has risen a little, and the number of variables which I have in my model is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. So I have 12 variables in my model. So all variables was actually 13 variables. Let's go down to 11 variables now. So which variable should I eject? And it seems to be 0.8484 is the highest or the most insignificant now amongst the slot. So prog1 needs to go. Let's check out prog1. Run the model again. And let's have a look. The r square has started to decrease, but our adjusted r square is continuing to increase. A shocker, isn't it? So there we have it. Let's remove another variable. 0.8338 school 1. Anything else? No, that's it. So I'm going to remove 0.8381. Sorry, it's school 1. Let's get that out of the way, and let's look at our result again. So it's come down to 0.6036, and adjusted r square is 0.5827. We have 10 variables in the model. Let's go down to 9 variables now. And which is the variable which we need to eject next? So SEB1, sorry, SEB2 looks to be the next variable in line. Alright, so let's remove SEB2. So off with SEB2, rerun the model, and let's look at it. So 0.6035 is our r square, and 0.5847 is adjusted r square. Let's go down to 8 variables. So next variable which is needs to be removed looks like race underscore h. So off you go. So you can probably see what I'm doing right now. I'm actually figuring out at what point does the model stop overfitting. So right now we are dealing with an overfitted model, and so it goes down to 0.6031, and adjusted r square is 0.5865. Come down to 7 variables. Which variable needs to be removed now? Looks to be race AA. So off with race AA, and let's run it again. Opening the latest model, and R square has reduced even more. And let's look at the adjusted R square over here. Let's bring it down to 6 variables now. So next up on the chopping block seems to be the gender or female. So let's remove the gender variable and run this procedure once more. Let's have a look. So R square is 0.6013 and adjusted R square is 0.5890. Makes sense. Let's bring it down to 5 variables now. We still have some ridiculous variables here. Let's remove social studies. There we go. Social studies removed. So 0.6013 and adjusted R square is 0.5890. Let's go down to 4 variables now. And which is the next variable to be removed? Okay. Did I just copy the same result? Yeah, I didn't open the latest results. So sorry about that. I'll just update that correctly. Here we go. So the R square is actually 0.5991 and adjusted R square is 0.5888. We see a inversion taking place here now. So now let's go down to 4 variables. So which variable should I remove? Seems to be race underscore A. So let's go down and remove race underscore A. Let's run the model and open the latest output. And let's copy in the R square and adjusted R square, the adjusted R square. I want to go down to 3 variables now. So which variable should I remove? It seems to be the right variable over here. So off with right. So sorry. And let's have a look. Let's have a look again here. So R square is down to 0.566 and adjusted R square is also down to 0.566. I'll just make this as point. And let's go down to 2 variables and let's see which variable should we remove here. So all of them are actually pretty significant. So I'm just going to remove prog2 from here. And let's see the model performance. Let's look. R square is down to 0.5141 and adjusted R square is down to 0.5092. And I'm going to go down to one variable itself. So I'll just remove one variable at random from here. I'll just remove read. So we have just model math equal to science. That's our single variable model. And there we go. So 0.3978 and adjusted R square is 0.3948. So why did I go through all these steps? So I'm going to actually now uh, use this data and I'm going to sort it the other way around. So instead of backward selection, I'll just say smallest to largest, and I'm going to plot these R square and adjusted R square together. So let's plot them and see what kind of a data set we get. And as I suspected, so let me just make this a little bit better. So we'll start off with minimum as 0.39. That should do. And there we get it. So if we look at this data, so it when I start off with the let's begin with actually 0 variables each, so that we have 0, and r square would be 0 and adjusted r square will also be 0, and make our data set apply on both sides. Pull this up also as 0. So there we have it. When I move from in fact, let's keep it the other way itself. The previous way was better. Yeah. So now as you can see, the red line is adjusted r square and blue line is r square. And if I keep on increasing the number of variables in my model, the r square initially jumps up very quickly, and after that it becomes pretty flat and doesn't change anymore. And if I look at the adjusted r square, initially it rises up very quickly with r square, but after a certain point in time it starts diverging and then it starts going down. And it's going down because I'm overfitting the model, i.e. I'm stuffing in variables, but these variables are not bringing anything to value for me, and they are increasing my r square. As you can see, the r square always increases even if if I pump in insignificant variables. It doesn't matter. The r square will always continue to rise, but it rises very very slowly. And whereas my adjusted r square then starts a rapid decline. It peaks at I think 0.589 if I'm not mistaken, which is at six number of variables, and after that it starts to go down. So I know that beyond this point I'm probably overfitting my model. So I should have stopped at anywhere from 4 to 6 variables in my model, and beyond that I should not go because I'm quite likely to overfit the model. And this is an example where even if I look at the p-values, I can see that when the variables in my model started becoming insignificant at let's say p-value greater than alpha of 5%, that was where this inflection point occurs. So the inflection point is likely to occur at an alpha value of anywhere from 5% to 10%. It can even occur at maybe 2 or 3% p-value, but lesser than that it won't occur, and greater than that obviously those variables are as it is being used for stuffing and they are not really significant in our regression. So this is what we wanted to cover. How do we actually avoid model overfitting? What does model overfitting actually mean? And how we can use the p-value approach to identify and remove insignificant variables, and also keep an eye on r square and compare it with adjusted r square. So if this difference starts to actually become very large, and if I plot this as a sort of a graph, right? So did I make this correct? Yeah. So you can see the difference keeps on increasing. At a certain point, the difference is actually very large, and that's the point at where the overfitting starts to take place. So you can see at between 5 and 6, the differences become really large. When this graph sometimes can make sense, in this particular case it seems to have a constant slope, so it may not actually make sense. But you can look at the r square and adjusted r square plotted together, and the point at which they start to diverge, that should be a good indicator that the overfitting is taking place. Overfitting over here is taking place between 5 and 6 variables. Beyond that, the model is overfitted. So that's what we wanted to cover over here. And in our next lecture, I'm going to talk about the residual analysis and how to use scoring in SAS. So we've now covered in OLS regression the basics of OLS regression, how what is slope and constant mean, and how do we actually estimate it using ordinary least squares. Then we talked about multiple linear regression. We've talked about the assumptions of OLS regression. We talked about establishing linear relationships between dependent variables and independent variables. How do we test the linear relationship? We talked about collinearity, multicollinearity, and how to detect and remove multicollinearity using the VIF or variance inflation factor. But there's a very important assumption regarding the residuals. So I had spent some time on talking about residuals in our previous lecture, specifically the properties of the residuals, that it needs to have a mean of 0, it should be normally distributed, and for any given value of x, the residuals, the difference between that is the squared, the error term between y and y hat, should come from the same underlying population. So that would mean that they have to be IID, independent, but from an identical distribution throughout. And we're going to check that in our next lecture. We're going to talk about how do we generate the residuals, how do we check for normality of the residuals, etc., and how do we ensure that their heteroscedasticity hasn't crept into our model. So that's going to be our next and last video on multiple linear regression, and post that we will actually move into more complicated forms of regression, more specifically logistic regression.